Welcome back to the She Thrives Influential Women podcast. I am your host, Lori Murphy, and I am an empowerment coach for women, public speaker, and award-winning published author. And it is so great to have you all joining me again. For those of you that are new to this podcast, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, never miss another episode, and be sure to leave a review. These things help boost this community up into algorithms so people can find it easier and be able to hear a very positive and influential message. And I also want to let you know, if you are new to this podcast, a little bit about me is that my journey in recovery from alcoholism for the past 13 years has led me down an incredible path of transformation, healing, and growth, and has given me the mental clarity to be able to hear my calling, to be able to help women in their own journeys. I'm certified in holistic health and wellness, as well as transformational life coaching, and with tools that I have utilized in my journey and have learned along the way, I have the pleasure of being able to utilize them to help others. And just to also give you a little bit of information, this podcast is turning into a beautiful community of women. So please go into the description, find the link to my free Facebook community, She Thrives Together. In this community, it is a growing community where we uplift each other, celebrate each other's wins, and give each other that love and support that we need. And it is a beautiful community, and I would love to have you be a part of it. But without further ado, I'd love to be able to introduce you to my wonderful guest today, Shea Opela. She is a wonderful woman. She is a bright light. I met her at a recent networking event for women, and I got to say, she has just got this energy that just draws you right in. And it is my pleasure to have her on today. Shea, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Lori. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. I remember the first day I met you, it was only about a few months ago, and it was just like there was just this vibe. I was like, I got to know her. I got to have her in my circle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we do is we both have such a heart to just help and empower women. So I'm so glad that we've had the opportunity to just cross paths.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, who you are, where are you from, and what led you into the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Shay. I'm from upstate New York. I was born and raised in the Round Lake Clifton Park area. I've lived here for almost my entire life. I went out to college in Oneonta and then moved out to Binghamton for a couple years, and then recently in the past couple years moved back to the Albany area just because I love it here. I love the mountains. I love the lakes, everything about it. It just there's no other place I'd rather be other than the winter when it's snowy. Then I'd prefer to be in sunny Florida. But
Absolutely. I
other
can
than that,
relate to that.
yeah, other than that, I love living here in upstate New York. And so this is where I reside. I'm married, I have a husband, and I recently opened up my own practice about a year and a half ago at this point. So I'm an inner alignment practitioner. And, there's a long story and there's a short story of how I got into this work. So I'll give a little bit of the in between. I have always had such a heart for helping people. From as young of an age as 12, I was mother's helping. I was trying to babysit. I just wanted to work with families and kids. So when I graduated with my bachelor's from human development in child and family studies, I went into the social work field, and there was parts of it that I absolutely loved. I worked for the organization Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and that mentoring program was just such an incredible organization. And then I moved into a little bit of a different sphere, helping kids with emotional regulation, and any behavioral things that were coming up for them that they may just need guidance in. And there is a lot of beautiful aspects to both jobs. I loved working with families, I loved working with kids. But as a lot of social work places are, they're very understaffed, and they're struggling to really be able to help families and kids in a larger capacity. So I called my colleague and family friend Kimberly Beekman. And for those of you who don't know Kimberly Beekman, she also resides in the Saratoga Springs area, recently moved out to San Diego, and she created this inner alignment system. So, Kim's background is she tried a few different healing modalities. Talk therapy, was in psychiatric hospitals, and did a lot of her own work. And what she found was that talking only brought people so far. It
Mhm.
wasn't always healing the root issue of what was going on for people.
Yes.
And so, what would
Yes.
happen is people would talk about the same things that were coming up for them, which is important, but it was almost just keeping them on a hamster wheel.
Oh,
And
yes.
so him really designed this program to help people have a deeper understanding of where their trauma, where deep wounds, how they respond, how they react comes from. So it's an 8-week program. And the last year and a half, I've been able to help dozens and dozens of people through the inner alignment system, really being able to come back to their most authentic self and get
Mhm.
off the hamster wheel of life so that they can really step into who they are.
That's amazing. And, I'm loving how you phrased it as, you kind of get stuck in this hamster wheel where you're constantly feeling like you're feeling the same things over and over again. And it's just like this constant struggle. And it's I've had many experiences just, with talk therapy or in my journey alone where I felt like I was on a hamster wheel because I knew that deep down inside there was a reason, there's a root cause for this. So let's dive into the causes and conditions. And you utilize a holistic approach to doing so. So give us an idea of what that holistic approach looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely believe in holistic health because our mind, our body, and spirit are so interconnected. If
Mhm.
we're not feeling well physically, it's really hard to feel well mentally and emotionally.
Mhm.
And vice versa. If we're not doing well mentally and emotionally, it's really hard for us to take care of our bodies. It's really hard to prioritize going on a walk, going to the gym, and really taking care of ourselves.
Right.
So typically, when someone comes into my office and they're interested in working with me, I ask a handful of questions. But the first few questions I really start with is I ask people what's not working in their life. And a lot of times it's people coming to me and they say, you know, in the last year or two, I've gained 30 pounds. I feel fatigued. I feel overwhelmed. I feel stressed, and I just keep having the same reactions. I keep yelling at my kids, even though I don't want to. I
Hmm.
still wake up feeling miserable. And in return, it prevents me from having a good connection with my husband. And then in return, I neglect my own self care. And
Yeah.
so after I hear what's going on mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, I ask them, well, what do you want? Because so often we're focusing on what we don't want. We don't want to feel sick anymore.
Yes.
We don't want to feel heavy. We don't want to feel sad and depressed and angry. So I like to flip the script and I like to ask people, well, then what is it that you do want so we can start focusing and cultivating the life that you want? And
Yes.
so if people come to me and they say, well, I want to lose 30 pounds, I might dig a little deeper. I might say,
Oh, yes.
why? Why is that important to you? And how would you feel if you lost 30 pounds, right? Because a lot of times it's based on a feeling. We have a number
Hmm.
in mind or we have a goal in mind. But when we get to the root of that, I really ask people if you reach that goal, what is the desired feeling that you would feel? And a lot of times it's I would feel lighter in my body. I would feel joyful when I woke up, right? And so
Sure.
I really help people get clear on what they want and how they want to feel.
Yes.
And then in the 8 weeks, I each week I give them about 2 to 3 goals. And some of the goals is helping them learn how to regulate their nervous
Hmm.
system so that they can feel safe and grounded within their bodies. Another goal might be, can you prioritize just going on a 10-minute walk today? Because I think so often people see these programs of losing 30 pounds, but it requires going to the gym and almost killing yourself because they're so focused on one goal. But, for people who feel so down in the dumps, sometimes they just need to know, okay, I can go on a 10-minute walk, and this is a really good
Yes.
step towards my goal.
Yes. And I couldn't agree with that more because that's, I do like similar approaches with women that I
Yeah.
work with, based on, okay, let's take a look at, you know, how's your stress level? Because what we don't realize is if we are running on, a high level of stress and our cortisol levels are shooting through the roof, we are more, especially with hormones, we are more likely to have struggles with losing weight, especially if we are more geared toward, well, this is how I'm going to deal with my stress. I'm going to reach for that donut in the break room at work, right? Because a lot of our stress can come from, our work environments. That's been a, history that I've lived in my own personal experience and journey. But one of the things too that I've also learned to look at is, what is the cause and condition on a deeper level. So when I started my journey from alcohol, recovery from alcoholism, I found that I switched from alcohol to baked goods and unhealthy foods because I was still trying to mask what was going on internally. I hadn't dealt with the traumas that I've endured in the past. So it was almost like I was using that as my protection. And I never realized it until I actually saw it, until I started to address those past issues that I'm still trying to cover it up,
Mhm. Yeah.
Have you ever experienced anything like that in your work where you've learned that some of that struggle it comes from suppressed trauma?
Oh yeah, yeah, all the time. I see it all the time in my clients. I appreciate your vulnerability and your transparency about, it used to be alcohol and then it switched to baked goods, right? And then as you grow and you start looking inward, you start having the awareness of, I just switched from one vice to the next vice. And it's really not until you look at what's going on head on
Yes.
that you see, wow, each vice I choose is just another way that I'm suppressing my trauma and my hurt. And so I think what we offer clients is so beautiful because I think that there is so much noise in this generation. We look online and we see we should be doing this and we should be doing that, but if we don't have someone, a coach who comes around us in a safe, loving environment and says, hey, I see that you're turning to something, whether it's staying busy. I work with a lot of busy entrepreneurs, and so I
Hmm.
see a lot of people just staying busy so that they can run and suppress. And so I just encourage them, what would feel really good for you tonight to just, look inward and just connect with yourself. And, a
Sure.
lot of times it's not necessarily looking up all the past stuff, but sometimes it's just, maybe I'm just going to take a bubble bath tonight and I'm just
Mhm.
going to allow myself to rest.
Yes.
And from a place of resting is when your nervous system allows you to start looking at that in a deeper way. And
Yes.
so, yeah, all the time I'm able to say, in sessions, we're going to hold a loving and safe container for you to look at your past stuff together where it feels safe.
Hmm.
And then when you're home and when you're alone and it might feel a little scary to look at it, let's just take small steps, even if it's just sitting with what's
Yes.
going on versus running or numbing.
Yes, exactly. Because a lot of times when we are go, 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 we're not allowing ourselves that time to have that clarity, even if it's just 10 minutes to sit still. And I think that sometimes, and again, this all goes back to things that, my past experiences, things that I've seen with, clients or other people in my life is the avoidance of what might come up. Because sometimes it's uncomfortable to
Absolutely.
have whatever, because if we're constantly on the go, 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 we're not hearing what's going on in here. And sometimes what might come up may be painful, may be uncomfortable,
Yeah.
so how do we approach those feelings without having to feel like we have to silence it again by getting busy? You know,
Mm,
I love meditation. I find that that is a great resource, and journaling, being able to just find a healthy way to just get it out.
yeah. Absolutely. I encourage my clients to use both of those tools as well because it can be so helpful to be able to just allow space for whatever wants to come up, right?
Yeah.
So I love meditation. I love journaling. I think it's a great way to just be able to get out what you're feeling because I think a lot
Yes.
of people that struggle with anxiety, they hold a lot in their body and in their mind. And so with journaling, it allows you to just get everything out, to see it a little bit more clearly.
Yes.
So I agree. Both of those methods are just they can be so powerful.
Sure. And when we're storing all of that, it's creating inflammation throughout our whole body because it doesn't have anywhere to go. So it's just storing. And a lot of times it stores. So, like, I don't know if you've experienced this, it stores for me right in my gut. You know what I
Yep,
mean? And you
yep,
feel it. And that causes that
mhm,
sluggish feeling and that exhausted, burnt out, overwhelmed feeling.
yeah, yeah.
What other tools would you suggest to somebody who might be not even realizing subconsciously that they may be
Mhm.
staying busy as a form of avoidance?
Yeah, I would say starting to develop a deeper body awareness can be so huge. In the first week of my program, I just encourage my clients to just start being aware of what shows up for them when they become overwhelmed, when they become anxious, when they become angry. I just say the first week, when you start to have these negative emotions, can you just be curious about what sensations start to come up when you get into this place? And a
Yes.
lot of times it's a tightness in the chest, or it's a tightness in the throat, or a pit in the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And what I just offer my clients is, can you just recognize it and can you just sit with it? And a lot of times that can be scary for people to think, well, no,
Oh yeah.
I don't want to sit with those emotions. But I say, guess what? You're already doing it. You're already doing it when you feel anxious, when you feel overwhelmed. So often we say that we don't want to feel these things, but we are. We're living in it. When we keep these negative thoughts just going, and we just stay in these sensations. So what I offer is I say, can you just bring awareness to the tightness in your chest and just allow yourself to feel it? And maybe take some deep breaths and breathe into that area that feels tight and that feels overwhelmed. And a belief that people have is if I feel it, then I'm going to make it worse. But you have to make it worse for it to get better. So I
Mm-hmm.
encourage my clients just get the data. If you just feel that tightness in your chest this week, can you just sit with that and make space for it? And in 5 minutes, after you sit with it, notice if it still feels really tight and heavy. And a lot of times it doesn't. A lot of times it starts to dissipate because you brought awareness to it. But so often
Exactly.
we're avoiding it and numbing and distracting that it just keeps building like building blocks. But when we actually just say, hey, I see you, I feel you, I'm just going to give you space to have your little tantrum,
Mm-hmm.
it starts to dissipate and it starts to
Right.
be released. And so that is a really powerful tool that I have
Sure.
my clients start with.
Yes. And giving yourself grace in those moments, because those feelings I find can be very normal, especially if it's everyday to day stress or, and I feel like society in some way, shape, or form has programmed inside us that, it's weakness if you cry. It's weakness if you are emotional because, we're women and, I remember being called a crybaby for crying when I felt intense emotions. No one actually told me that this is a form of release. This is your body's natural default to release whatever it is that you need to. So giving yourself that space that even if it is to cry, let yourself to, have that space to do it. Bringing yourself, like you said, bringing awareness to it, doing some deep breaths. Because I feel like we get this almost like a shame for having emotions and feeling our feelings. So we busy ourselves more and more, creating more stress, creating more angst.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that it's so important to be able to surround yourself in places where you feel safe. I know for
Yes.
me, if I've had a really long and busy week, sometimes my apartment can get messy and I can just start to feel overwhelmed. And the best place for me to be is out in the woods. Even if it's
Yes.
cold, I bundle up, I go outside and I just take a half hour to an hour walk and I just allow all the emotions and thoughts from the past week to just come up while I
Hmm.
just be in nature. And sometimes that's the safest place for me.
Hmm.
But for other people, it might be in their bedroom, under their blankets, just feeling that warmth and just feeling that safety. So that's
Yes.
that's what I would also recommend, if you were starting to work on yourself and connect inward. Find that safe space to be alone with your thoughts in a place that feels refreshing and nourishing for you. It's a
Sure.
lot easier to start opening up and looking at stuff when you're in an atmosphere that feels warm and safe.
Yes. Nature is my go-to. But I mentioned before we started the podcast, my husband and I, his family has a camp in the Adirondack Mountains, and that it's closed up for the winter because it's not winterized. But the second that camp opens, we're there, and we're there every weekend. And I feel like in the months from May to October, we are a lot less stressed because we have that capability to be up there to just like I'll get up early in the morning and I go for a walk and then I sit outside and listen to the birds and I think his job is very stressful and it weighs on him sometimes. So he just kind of like all last summer really took it easy and gave himself that time for self-care because his body was telling him he needed to rest. And I like to be outside in those moments because I love the air. I love the smell of the trees, everything about nature, because some of the, the deepest healing that I've ever had has been on top of a mountain and on a hiking trail because it has allowed me that safe space
Mhm.
to just be able to just, that it soothed my soul.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
cried on the top of mountains, like, and just released it. And when I was done with that hike, it was like this huge weight would lift off of me, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful. It's powerful. And I think it's so cool that you know your places. You know the places that make you feel safe and alive and free and a place that you can just release. And
Yeah,
so I just think that's so important for people to find that places. Sometimes it is in their coaches or therapist office. Sometimes it is at the gym. Sometimes it is on the top of a mountain. I think it's just so important for everyone to know where is my place that I feel like I can just be free and I can just release.
absolutely. Now, I'm curious, and if you don't mind me asking, because, a lot of times, like, I feel like people like you and I who are in this line of work, we are called to it from, like you just knew at a young age, like you were called to help people, getting into social work. Would you say that events in your own personal life that led you to really take the action into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason why I got into this specific line of work to become an inner alignment practitioner is because my mom is a single mom and she had a lot of trauma in her upbringing. She was one of seven, and she would come home most days and just be exhausted and overwhelmed and would be at frankly her breaking point. And so there was a lot that was surfacing for my mom when I was younger that I witnessed and I saw. And my mom was also in and out of meetings. She was in and out of group therapy and she was doing the work. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, she was on that hamster wheel still. And so one day she was at a yoga class and she met Kimberly Beekman. And Kimberly Beekman was just starting in her alignment. And my mom was like, I'm a single mom of three kids. There's no way I'm going to be able to commit to doing something like this. And something in her spirit just said, you're going to do it. This is your next journey. And so my mom started the Inner Alignment program and she was just responding to us in just such a different and healthier way. She would come home and instead of, getting upset with what the house looked like, she'd say, I just need 20 minutes to step away and just decompress from the day that I had so that I can come back out and have a nice evening with you guys. Or, I'm not really upset about the dishwasher not being emptied. It's actually bringing up something from deeper within me. And
Yeah,
so as a young adult, I got to just see how my mom was responding to us in just such a healthy way where she wasn't perfect and she wasn't trying to be, but she was able to handle things in just such a healthier way. And I just remember when I first got married, I had this fight or flight instinct of I'm feeling trapped. I'm feeling angry. I'm responding the same way that I saw growing up and I don't know how I can be in a marriage when I'm responding in an angry and flighty way. And so I just remember going back and thinking about how my mom shifted her behaviors and her thoughts when she started doing inner alignment. And I said, even if me doing inner alignment isn't to help other people, I need to do it for me. I need to do it for my marriage. I need to do it for my future children. And
sure.
that was really the turning point to say, I need to do something. I need to do something different for my future self and my future family. And that's really what got me into this work.
Right. I understand that. It's hard when we don't even realize that we carry those old like that old energy with us sometimes and tend to take it out on the people that we love most. And we don't always realize that our reactions are actually us not reacting to what's presently happening, like the dishes not being taken out of the dishwasher. It's actually something deeper.
Yeah. And once you start to do the inner work and you start to have the awareness that things are upsetting you from so much deeper than just the present moment, you
Hmm.
start to have so much more grace for yourself and so much more understanding. So I just was working with a client on Monday, and he said, I'm just feeling so overwhelmed about work. I have so many responsibilities and I'm just so overwhelmed by it. And sure, that's a common thing to feel overwhelmed by work, but as a trained professional, I knew there was something different, right? So I asked him, why do you think that is? And he had a really hard time coming up with, well, anything deeper than just work, right? So I said, do you mind just closing your eyes for a minute? I just want you to close your eyes and I just want you to think about what feels so overwhelming and feel that in your body. And as soon as he felt it in his body, a memory from childhood came up where he felt so out of control.
Hmm.
And he said, wow, this stems so much deeper than just what's going on at work. This goes all the way back to childhood when I felt like there was so much happening and I didn't feel that safety and I didn't feel that control. And
Yeah,
so we were able to have such a great conversation around that,
sure.
because that's what happens so often is we feel so overwhelmed by something or so
Hmm.
angry or so upset, but when we're able to take that moment and say, what is this really about? We're able to have a deeper understanding of, wow, this stems so much deeper than
Right,
just work.
right. It's crazy. Like sometimes I can feel it. Like if I, because I work a full-time job, I have a business and I have a house to take care of. And sometimes I get kind of stuck in that and I'll feel stressed out if there's dishes in the sink and I have to stop and I could feel myself like feeling like anger. And I'll have to
Yeah,
stop and be like, first of all, like, where's this coming from? And be able
right.
to give myself that grace. And you know what? If the dishes really, if they sit in the sink for overnight, is it really going to be a big deal? No. But I know where that comes from because I know that in my upbringing, it was, we had to, the house had to be clean,
Yeah,
and sometimes I have to remember that, my husband is busy, I am busy, and sometimes we need to take care of ourselves first.
right.
So at 8 o'clock at night, when we've both just got done working a long day, is sitting down and just decompressing for a half an hour before going to bed more beneficial than trying to get the house clean. You know what I mean? But it's interesting. So it's like sometimes I have to give myself that allowance to just let myself just take care of my body first because I can get very overwhelmed and very tired. You know what I mean? If I push myself to the max. So I utilize myself a lot in examples to show to say that, yeah, I get it. you
Oh,
know
yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we're all guilty of it for sure. I think that we can all fall into those ruts. And, that's human. I always tell my clients that at the end of the 8 weeks, they're like, I feel so much better. I feel like I'm handling things in such a healthier way, but there's still some times where I just still fall into the same patterns. And I say, of course you did. You're human. But the
Exactly.
difference between 8 weeks ago and now is that you have that awareness to
Exactly.
pause that reactivity and say, you know what? I'm doing that. I need to do something else so I don't
Hmm.
stay stuck in that same pattern. And that sounds
Sure.
like exactly what you're doing. So
Oh yeah.
that's the important part is that we have the awareness and we start to change the behaviors.
Absolutely. I love having a clean house and I love that because it does ease the anxiety having a clean space, but sometimes we have to listen to what our bodies are telling us. And, sometimes those reactions, like we have said, it comes from somewhere else. And just being able to
Absolutely.
recognize that, when we can recognize that, we have better manageability over it. And there's
Absolutely.
a lot of power in that.
There sure is. There sure is. And that's why both of us are empowerment coaches, right? It's so freeing and empowering when we start to become more aware of these things that we do and then we say, "Oh, wow, I see that pattern. I have the tools to know I can do something different." And that's where the empowerment kicks in. And that's when you can really start to know we're so capable of making healthier and better decisions for ourselves and the people around us once we have the tools.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shay, how can people find you if they want to book a call with you or learn more about the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say probably the best way is if you just Google Rooted Within Holistic Therapeutic Practice, you can find it right on Google. I'm located in Ballston Lake, but I also offer sessions virtually. So I would say probably Googling my business, which is Rooted Within LLC. You can also find me on Instagram at Rooted with Shay and Facebook, Rooted Within as well. So either one of those platforms, you can find me there. And
Abs-
it's super easy. You can send me an email or give me a call if you're interested in booking a session, or just a discovery call to learn more to see if it's something that aligns with what you're looking for. I always offer those complimentary.
Absolutely. And I will be sure to be putting those links in the description of this episode so that you can find her very easily. And I highly recommend that you do because you will just, even if it's just to find a new friendship, she's a
Mm.
delight. And I'm so grateful that you took the time to share with us a little bit about what you do. And I just feel like this was a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lori. Thanks so much for having me. I think that the work you do is also so important and so needed. So glad that our paths crossed and we were able to have this conversation.
Absolutely. And I can be of service in any way for anybody listening, please feel free to find me. My contacts will also be in the description of this podcast, as well as the link for my free Facebook group for women. It's called She Thrives Together. I would love to have you. I would love to be able to, lift you up and celebrate you. And also, just to make you all aware that in March, there will be the release of an upcoming anthology that I am co-authoring called Warrior Women Series 3. This is a phenomenal book. It is going to be listed for $25, and I would love to be able to get you on the wait list for this book. It is a book jam-packed full of amazing stories from empowering women throughout the country. I highly recommend you get your hands on this book. There is also volume 1 and 2. You can also get in touch with those by contacting me, and I'll put you in the hands of somebody that can get you those volumes as well. But that is something that is coming out in March, is series 3. Keep your eye out. And I will be sharing a very deep part of my story that I have not shared very openly. Up until recently, I will be doing a deep dive into that. And I would love to be able to have you all, hear this story. And I hope that it brings you inspiration, empowerment, and hope. But until next time, thank you so much for listening. Shea, thank you so much again for taking the time to chat with us today. And until next time, let go of fear and let your spirit shine.